This episode of the Pain Education Corner is sponsored by the Comella Foundation. The Comella Foundation is committed to relieving pain naturally using osteopathic healing principles. Here at the Comella Foundation, we envision a world where people achieve their maximum potential by being empowered with knowledge and skills to heal themselves and others. This information is to be used for educational purposes only and not to be construed as medical advice. If you have any questions or concerns, please consult a licensed healthcare professional. Bill, the knee pain guru, and welcome to the Pain Education Podcast. Today's guest, we have Dr. Andrea.
Andrea.
You got
it the second time. You're great.
Dr. Andrea Moore. Welcome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And today we're going to talk about pain.
Yes, like my favorite topic. I'm like, pain, trauma, give it to me all. I love it.
Yeah. So would you share your history? Like what brought you to today, to the show today? You have a great story I'd like you to share with the listeners.
Yeah. So I always kind of joke around saying that I am a recovering health perfectionist because a lot of my story revolves around this constant need to try to fix myself and everything I thought was wrong with me because I suffered with chronic pain. I've had really bad post-concussive syndrome. I've had stomach issues. I've had depression. I've had anxiety, all by like the time I was 25. Mm-hmm. So it was this constant like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? And especially with my chronic pain, I have my doctorate in physical therapy. So even integrating in these things that I knew and I was learning, they weren't helping me. And I was just on a mission to figure out how to help myself. And in that, I mean, I could, tell my story for an hour, but we'll keep it short here. It's like in that I really found some of these missing pieces that aren't commonly described in conventional medicine, in conventional therapy. And as such, I was getting so many women on my schedule who had a really similar story to mine. They were struggling with chronic pain and they had done it all. They were doing it all right. Like they were like, I can show you my exercise, handout and everything. And they just still weren't getting better. And I was like, there just has to be something we're missing. I just refused to believe it was like, oh, they're not doing their exercises or, that it was just a fault of like physical therapy and not being enough. It's like, there just had to be more that we were not addressing. So in that, I really delved into a lot of things like from nutritional therapy to life coaching. And then ultimately, I bring it all together, but really where I focus now is the somatic work embodiment and then really addressing this trauma component and this perfectionism piece that a lot of women struggle with as well.
Could you talk about your injuries a little bit? Like you talk about you had a concussive, and I'm like, I've had so many head injuries. So I'm like, would love to hear.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I had multiple head injuries before my really bad one. Like it was just like my head was, a magnet for things. Like I remember when I was younger, like trying to skateboard and flipping off the skateboard and smacking my head on the tile floor. Mm-hmm. I had a giant pot fall on my head in cooking class in high school. I know there was other ones, but then the big one was I got into a really bad car accident in 2013. And it took me 6 months to build back up to like working full time again. And even then my symptoms were persisting. So what I really struggled with was this brain fog, this feeling like my head was in a vice, like I couldn't find words, like massive memory issues, depression, anxiety. And what I struggled with the most was that I didn't have visible injuries. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot of people dismissing me. I remember like so clearly trying to describe it. And someone's like, it sounds like the case of the Mondays. And I'm like, I've lived through a lot of Mondays. I know what Mondays feel like. This is different. And it's like, I couldn't get anyone to take me seriously. And when I can't remember the concussion form, like my score was off the charts. Like, that was the rating, but everyone's like, well, just wait it off. So that was a massive, massive part of my journey. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, we could spend the whole hour
I
talking
know.
about concussions.
I know. It is, yeah, because I feel like it lumps into all of this really well, because it's like a lot of my, even with anyone who struggles with like chronic migraines,
Mhm.
it's just this feeling. I think what I would want to describe it as, it's like this feeling of you're not completely yourself. Like, you
Mhm.
know that there's got to be more. Like, you're like, I know this isn't fully me. And I find anyone who has symptoms that kind of fall into that category, you're like, pain that's not that bad, it's low level. I'm putting this in quotes if anyone's listening,
Yeah.
that it's this like, there's just this deep knowing of like, it's not my full self that's here. And
Right.
that's really where the internal battle comes in
It,
for it.
and I'd like to talk about that for a minute, because I believe there's this place that when a person is feeling not quite themselves, or they have this low grade something or other, it's just the Mondays or whatever the conventional approach is labeling it as, it causes people who hear this to kind of disregard what's going on with them. It's almost like it's not valid in some way, because it's not being acknowledged by those people who are quote unquote professionals. That it's
Totally.
like they're stepping up and they're saying, just ignore it. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so damaging to the system, right? Because that's so
Mhm.
invalidating, and it's ultimately, it's kind of dehumanizing, right? It's because you're stepping up for what you know to be true for yourself, and your experience is just literally being dismissed. And oftentimes it's being dismissed because doctors don't have the tools. Like, they don't know what to do. And I think often it's just like a mismatch. It's like trying to take your car to a plumber.
Right.
Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Like, the plumber could be the most knowledgeable plumber in the world. He just can't fix your car. So I think a
Right.
lot of times when we're dealing with these symptoms, we're showing up to the wrong person and trying
Right.
to get help. And it's like, they can't provide it and they don't know what else to do.
I agree. And I don't necessarily fault the medical profession
No.
for not
Yeah,
knowing. I
totally.
do fault them for overstepping into an
Yes.
area what they don't know.
Yeah.
But well, I think I'd really like it to land for the listeners today to understand that the analogy you just said, car, you don't take the plumber to fix your car.
Yeah.
So that we can look for other healthcare practitioners that may not fall in the conventional categories to get help, to get support.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I want to pick your brain about how would someone define who that person is? Because that's something that uh, I, I didn't necessarily struggle with. Those people that had the ability to help me with my concussions
Mhm.
and the spinal misalignments and body alignment issues, they just showed up in my life. However that happened, I'm not really sure, but it did. So I didn't have a lack of alternative healthcare professionals to get support for me in my journey. I'm curious as to, in your journey, what was that like for you? How did you find the people to support you?
Yeah, I actually love what you said about they just fell in my lap, that you don't even know how they appeared. And I honestly think that this is sometimes one of the best ways to find people. It's almost this like sending out, I don't know how woo you get here, but it's like sending out this like clear message to the universe, or however you want to call it, of like, this is the support I need. And often it's like, then you go to the library and it's like, this book is front and center, and that's the next book you read that takes you in this next step to your journey. And then you Google something and it's like this website pops up, or this, you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, I don't even know how I got here. I almost feel it's like those things often are some of the best things. It's like this energetic match almost.
Mhm.
Because often what I struggled with was this search for like trying to find the perfect person who could fix all my problems and fix me up, when what I wasn't realizing is that nothing was truly broken. Like,
Mhm.
there were things that my body needed support with, but it wasn't like the fault of mine.
Mhm.
And And it wasn't until I really opened myself up to this concept of like acceptance and just really being okay with where I was and coming to love myself for exactly the symptoms and memory issues and all, and things like that, that all of a sudden I felt like I could let in the support. Yeah.
Okay. I can go as woo as you can go.
I love you. So good.
And I think it taps into the power of our mind.
Yes.
And awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and getting out of our own way. I think
Yes.
there's an element of all three of those that is important, because sometimes we get in our own way by having listened to all of those people that is saying, just ignore what we're feeling. So now it's like, I can't even acknowledge how I feel. I can't even accept the fact that I have a headache without going, yeah, it's low grade today.
Yeah.
Without saying it's been worse.
Yes.
So I think that's the first step, is to kind of check in to see how you feel. Oh yeah, my stomach doesn't feel so good today. I have tension between my shoulder blades. My lower back kind of hurts.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And now it's like putting that out there, that I need help and support in these areas by us acknowledging where we're at.
Yes. Yes. And I think you touched on something so important of like, we hear these voices, so we don't know how to hear our own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I really struggled with. And a lot of the women I work with struggle with is they might even have read a lot of books on mindset and know the power of the mind and know, oh, I know I should be accepting. Oh, I know I should listen to myself, but they have no idea how to. It's like coming to acceptance, probably, I don't even know how long that took me, right? Like that is a process in itself. And often we might read it in a book of like, okay, come to acceptance. And it's like, whoa, that's like being like, all right, just go to the gym and lift 350 pounds. Like, okay, we got to work our way up there.
Sure.
And so for me, it's like when I was reading about all this mindset stuff and even using it, like I was a coach and could coach people on their thoughts and a lot of these things, but I didn't know how to apply it to myself. Like I didn't have that self-trust there. There was no safety in my system to really listen to my true, authentic self, to receive this guidance. So a lot of my journey was building up that trust, was building up the safety. And it's a lot of what I do with women who it's like, they don't even know how to listen to themselves. Like, they're like, what voice? Or are you kidding me? If I listen to that voice, she's going to tell me to like, abandon my family and move to Hawaii. And like, I can't do that. I have kids to care for. I have things to do. It's like, there's no room. So where I'm really working with people is how to start to slowly recultivate that relationship to that voice that is always there, that's guiding them. And that's where I really believe our pain is like a messenger. It is like, hey, listen to me.
Yep.
You've been putting everyone else's needs first. Now it's time. Like, I'm going to force you to listen.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do it. Yes.
The pain definitely is a motivator.
Pain will get
do
you.
So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And ultimately for women, especially, when not only have we been not taught how to do this, it's been almost taught out of us. It hasn't been safe historically for women, and men included too. I really want to emphasize this, not just for women. I just happen to work with women mainly, but it's like we've been taught that doing anything out of societal norms is dangerous. Like, women up until like the 80s couldn't even access their own bank account. Like, it historically hasn't been safe for a woman to be like, I'm just going to like live my authentic life to me, because she was dependent on men or family or things like that to provide for her. So it's like you have to stay constrained into these things, because if you step out, you're going to be kicked out of your tribe and then you die. Right. So it's like our nervous systems have this trauma in it of like, whoa, it's unsafe to do anything that is different, or could be judged, or could be seen as, outside of the norm. And I think we get this built up trauma in our system that often leads to the chronic pain in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Could we touch on your training? Because from what I gathered from your website, you had a tremendous amount of training and education to get here. So I don't want to gloss over that. There's a tendency when we jump into what we really like to do, we overlook the years of knowledge and expertise that you bring to the table here. So would you share with that with
Yeah.
the listeners?
So I graduated from the University of Michigan, and then I went on to Medical University of South Carolina, where I got my doctorate in physical therapy. I actually did 2 residency programs, one through the clinic I was in and one through Evidence in Motion, which was specialized in orthopedics, and one had like a very manual focus on it. And then I'm board certified in orthopedics, so I'm an orthopedic specialist. And within then my years of continuing education, really emphasize the chronic pain piece. So I've taken a number of chronic pain specialty through Evidence in Motion, through I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Tata, but he's got a great acceptance and commitment therapy, if I could talk, course in chronic pain. I'm also a nutritional therapist. I'm a life coach, and then I am also bringing the somatic and embodiment work. And that I was trained by Dr. Valerie Rain and her partner, Jeffrey Tambor. And Dr. Rain wrote a book called Patriarchy Stress Disorder. And then Jeffrey is like an expert in the somatic work. And so I trained under them for a year. And
Nice.
Yeah, and there's probably a whole lot of courses and books and my own things and whatnot that I have taken over 10 years of experience and kind of condensed into what I feel like is really supportive for people. So,
and this is the program that you're offering. You do that in person, or is that strictly online, or how does that work?
All virtual.
Yep. All virtual. Oh, nice.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, cool. We'll definitely make sure at the bottom of this podcast, where it posts on the Comella Foundation website below, we'll have the ability for them to access more information from you, which is fantastic. Okay. Tell me, someone shows up, let's say they just got in a car accident and they shattered their windshield with their head. Okay. Which is an experience that I had, and only a small bruise right there. That was it. How would you work with me? What would that be? Being that you work with women and I am a guy, how would you work with that? You know what? I'm dealing with this. I close my eyes. All of a sudden the room starts spinning and I fall over. I'm having like crazy mood swings because it's like, I feel hormones are all off, or my brain just doesn't feel right. How would working with you look? Yeah.
So right now, what I would say is I want to differentiate between acute concussion and then chronic.
Okay. That's a good
super important, because like if you're saying that you're coming to me first thing, how I would treat that would be very, very different if you're coming in 3 months later.
Got it. Okay.
And right now, if you were coming to me with an acute concussion, I would probably refer you to somebody who is local and in person, who could actually, like a physical therapist who could, I'm trying to think of what the name is because I haven't used it in a long time, but there's like special goggles where they can like look at your eyes, and there's some really cool specialty areas for more acute concussion. So I would actually, if you're acute, I would refer you out right now is what I would do. I used to work with that in the clinic, but since I wouldn't be able to see you in person and I don't have like the tools right now, you're acute, go get kind of more appropriate support.
Sure. And I like to pause you just for a second there, because I think there's a misnomer when people have issues, they're going out to the internet to get the level of support that they actually need in person. So you made a huge distinction there. Yes. Acute concussion just happened. Make sure you go find support in person so you can get the level of support that you need.
Totally. Like there's some, I'm like, I mean, maybe if I can, there's some really cool, like this specialty. It's like oh my gosh, I don't know what they're called. There's some type of like neurologist chiropractor that's mixed together that I actually went to, and it helped tremendously, but they really help like refocus your eyes and your brain and do all kinds of crazy stuff that works really, really amazingly for both acute and chronic. I actually used it when I was chronic, but you could go acute. So that's like, if I were to get into a concussion, I would probably fly out to the guy I saw in Washington State and see him again, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
yes, go in person to somebody who knows how to look at your eye movements and leave it at that. Just ask around.
Sure.
But for chronic, and sometimes it's both and, right? It's never either or. Like, I received this support and I did all the work that I do now. If you are struggling with symptoms still 3 months later, kind of past this point of where like, you're like, you should have been healed by now. You know, maybe they'll like, for me, it's like, oh, it's, you know, let's give it a little more time. But it's like, okay, no, this is like not getting better. I feel stagnant. One of the first things I really work with people on is, what is your relationship to the symptoms themselves? And this is so important, because when we're in this place of like, I hate it, which totally valid if you do, I did, and resistance of like, I just need them to be gone, like they're ruining my life, it actually can block our healing. It creates, one, especially in a concussion itself, it's just already like a massive energy drain on the brain. Having this, being in this place of resistance and constant hatred every single time you're feeling a symptom and wanting it to go away and being like, it's ruining my life, just drains your energy even more and keeps you in this fight or flight, this like kind of traumatized nervous system state. We cannot heal when we're in that state.
Right.
So really a lot of the work I do first is really about getting like starting to first understanding how somebody is relating to their symptoms, and then working with them to slowly, because this does not change right away. Like, you can't just tell someone, all right, just be friends with your symptoms, have fun with them, it's okay. You know what I mean? That's not helpful. It's giving them room to fully express how they feel about their symptoms. So like allowing the anger to have expression, that's a massive change in your life. It's really frustrating to have symptoms. So like giving a lot of healthy expression of frustration, of anger, which a lot of people don't even know how to give healthy expression of those emotions in the first place. So I might need to teach how to do that first and guide them through that. And slowly over time, getting to where we can come into a place of actually compassion and acceptance and love of our symptoms and where we are. And then from there, a lot of times we can integrate healing modalities a lot, like they work a lot better because we're not resisting them. We're now in a parasympathetic state. We're now in a state where we can accept the healing. So yeah, and that ultimately is going to start looking different for everyone too, of like what their body needs. And a lot of it is helping people connect to their body, because the work I do now, I'm never telling anybody what they need to do. It's really letting their body guide that process, and me helping them get in touch with their body to understand what they need next. So, yeah.
So I'm just thinking through as you're talking about that, and it's like, okay, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me to get love and compassion for these feelings. And I'm getting angry.
Yes.
I'm getting like, ugh, I don't want to hear this woman tell me to find love and compassion for how I feel.
Yes.
Would you
and
speak
I'm like,
to that?
Yes. And I'm like, oh yes, let's let this anger out. Come on. Yes.
Okay.
Oftentimes, I love triggering people.
Okay, great.
And like the best one, this is something that what I set up with anyone I'm working with ahead of time, is that getting triggered is a fantastic way to identify where
we're stuck. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like, if you're like, I'm getting angry, and I'm like, yes, hell yes. Like then, okay, let's make so much space for that anger. How does that anger want to be expressed? And like, I literally have, work through a process called the rage stadium with people. And like, sometimes people are like, people will like sometimes put themselves on mute and turn off their screen, and because they're too embarrassed, but it's like, they're running around like thrashing and screaming. Like, one of my favorite practices is like raging in the car, because I swear if I did it in my own home, the neighbors would call the cops. But it's like, I'll driving and I'm just connecting to my rage, like a deep embodiment. I'm just like, like screaming because we need to let that out in such a healthy way. And most people don't have any modeling of what healthy rage and anger looks like. So you often, when people are getting angry, like, I don't want to get turned love and compassion, it's a great way to like start to bring up all this anger that has probably been suppressed far beyond before the injury in the first place. Like you're talking probably a lifetime that wants to be let out.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, we're working through. And then a lot of women, a lot of times they don't even want, like, they can't access that rage at first. It's like it starts coming out and they're like, oh, no, I can't do, so we might be working through all these blocks of shame or embarrassment, or a lady doesn't do that, and things like that, to get to a place where we can fully access it. So whatever is in the way is the way, right? So we're always like stepping back of like, okay, let's step back into that emotion and give that full expression. So, yeah.
Got it. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Education Corner. If you have a special talent or skill to relieve pain and you'd like to become a guest on our show, visit us at thecomellafoundation.org/interview. Help us spread the word on eliminating pain and suffering in the world. That's thecomellafoundation.org/interview. So we move through what was in the way, is the way. We get it out of the way. Now we get on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And I've moved that. I've expressed that. But I still feel bad.
Yeah.
I'm still feeling poopy. How do we address that? How do we address the, well, I could just go back to the accident. My cervical and thoracic spine was compressed from C1 all the way to T4-5-ish, something like that. Cranial bones were all like moved around, and that took a while. How do we approach that? How do we approach those types of things?
It's such a great question. And I want to, again, emphasize the individuality to something like that too, because for some people in their chronic pain, simply the emotional expression, and this is more usually like chronic pain that doesn't have a clear mechanism of injury, just the emotional expression is often enough. Like we start to notice the difference right away, or start to notice the connection between stress and their pain. When there's somebody who I'm working with, especially if it's virtual, who I'm like, oh, I mean, there's a physical component here that also would benefit from being addressed. It's one, I'm giving my expertise and supporting that from my knowledge of working with that, of course, of like helping them find a person who might be able to do the manual skills or work with that for what I feel like is guided or is indicated for them. And I also think it's so important that as somebody is going into any of those appointments, so let's say you're going to go get some craniosacral work done or something like that.
Sure.
That people are going in with a mindset that is supportive of the process that they're going to receive. And also there's such a difference between going in of like, okay, I just found this new craniosacral therapist and they said they can realign my cranial bones and that's going to fix me. And then all my life problems are going to be solved, right? It's kind of this like, looking for the next magic fix, which, I spent a lot of time doing that. I'm not shaming anyone or judging anyone who does that. I've been there. It's kind of this like false hope, right? And then we go in and maybe they do some excellent work, but we're not 100%. And so we almost cannot even receive the gain that they didn't make.
Is this a perfectionism piece you were talking about?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is where, so it's like, if you don't, like, if you can go in and you feel like 5% better and you can be like, heck yeah, this is amazing. And like, you're super excited about it and celebrate it. And you probably don't have the perfectionism problem. But if you go in and even like the therapist sometimes will be like, wow, this is moving really well. And okay, we made all these improvements. And it's like, yeah, but it's not better. I still feel like crap. It didn't make my pain go away completely. And we cannot celebrate these wins that really actually can block us receiving the benefit from any type of work that really could be supportive. And And really signs of this are if you have been to many, many different professionals, if you keep looking for the next person, if you're like, I've tried everything and I cannot get better, oftentimes this could be a component. Or if you're just kind of finding yourself like, okay, the emotional stuff is kind of a problem, but no, I just need to go to this massage therapist. They promised that they could, release all my muscle tension or something like that. Oftentimes those are signs of wanting to bypass doing the deeper inner work. And that's where people can stay stuck for a really long time.
Yeah. And I think what is being one of the pieces that's being overlooked, and I remember it was, I think it was Thomas Edison.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, well, he tried 10,000 ways to make the light bulb work. And someone asked him, well, why didn't you give up? He goes, because I eliminated 10,000 things that didn't work.
Yes.
To finally find the one way that did work. Yeah. So I think you're speaking to that, is that it's a journey. It's a path that we're on, that we're picking up these little nuggets of insight along the way of how our body works in different situations, in different scenarios.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up that story, because I feel like stories like that too can also, depending on your mindset, keep people stuck, because they're like, yeah, but then that 10,001th practitioner could be the one who solves all my problems, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of keeps us in that. And so when I'm working with somebody who has that, what I always tell them is like, look, maybe there is, like, there are, endless stories on the internet of, I took this supplement and my pain disappeared completely, right? Or I saw, great. There are so many supplements, so many practitioners. Like, maybe there is one person out there that when you see that person, they will heal you. What if it's not for another 50 years? Do you want to live those 50 years in misery and constantly searching? Or do you want to start living your life and enjoying it now? And it's always a choice. Like, it's always a choice. So the work that I do is never in the absence of other things. Like, it's actually like a beautiful adjunct to any, like, I still get energy work. I get massages. Like, I do all kinds of things like that, and encourage my clients to do it if it's right for them or feels good. It's that we're doing it as a way to make our day better. It's like if you had a beautiful bouquet of flowers, it's like, having a massage, that's just like putting another gorgeous flower in there. But the absence of it doesn't ruin it. Right? Yep. It's just, why not make my life 2% more enjoyable, or 30% more enjoyable, whatever it might be, with exactly where I am right now. Because otherwise you could be waiting a really, really long time, and there's no guarantee that magic fix is ever, that we're going to find it. You could try every single magic fix out there, and I think if you tried a different one every single day, there still would be more to try, right? That'd be really disappointing if none of them worked.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, share with me more of how you're working with clients online. We kind of went over the concussion scenario. You're talking about being there to facilitate or support. They're bringing in of other practitioners or medical professionals into the equation to help them along their path in their journey. What other components, aspects of your teaching and training online?
So the bulk of what I'm doing with clients, so normally when I'm meeting with somebody, they're committing to like 4 to 6 months of working with me, because this work takes time. And I'm always meemeeting with people to make sure they're right for the work that I do. If I don't think somebody's going to benefit, or I do actually think of like, oh, hey, I actually think that if you go get this, because I'm at heart a manual therapist. That was my original training. It's like, if I think there's some manual therapy that, because it's not every physical therapist is made equally. Like, if I think they haven't received something that I really do think could, it's like, oh, hey, if you go get this addressed, I actually think you'll be fine. I'm going to tell people that. I'm not going to work with anyone who I don't think is right for what I'm doing. So People are committing to 4 to 6 months of working together because this is so important to allow that spaciousness to heal. And so in most of our sessions, what we're really doing is this deep embodiment, somatic work, really first teaching women how to connect into their bodies and how to start like opening up that line of communications, looking at what's in the way of it, breaking it down. And I'm guiding them through those processes and healing, doing like this healing at a nervous system level. Mm-hmm. So we are bringing in a really trauma-informed care. And when I say trauma, I'm talking about a little t. I mean, I do have women who have big T trauma, of course, in their life as well. But a lot of what I work with is more the little t trauma, the trauma of just that every single person goes through life having, of times that, you know, our true voice was suppressed, times we were told we were too much, that we were showing up in a way that wasn't appropriate, or you're not professional enough, or however it may have showed up for anybody. And we're working through those components in a really guided, supported way, in a way that makes people feel really, really safe to delve into it, because some of these things can feel really, really unsafe. So it's finding the safety in the nervous system, because ultimately all chronic pain is from a sensitivity in the nervous system, from a hypervigilant or like a sensitized nervous system, which can be hypervigilance in a lot of people. And by healing the nervous system, by addressing it somatically, by processing these emotions and traumas, we actually calm the nervous system down.
Could you speak? You spoke a little bit to the little t trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it as being human.
Yes.
Like we go through these things and we just experience stuff. It didn't go our way, and it's like, oh man, it gets stuck in there. Could you speak to the big T trauma if it isn't blatantly apparent to those who are listening?
Yeah, so big T trauma are probably what most people think of when they hear the word trauma. So I mean, like to me, like a car accident, like you're smashing your head through a windshield, that is big T trauma. It can also be emotional, like emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. Anybody who's experienced, you know, especially if, I mean, we can go into like really big instances of trauma, of oppression, or like your country has been invaded by, you know, other people, which is like, that's what my parents went through. And, you were forced out of your home, like all of those things would be big T trauma. Sure. Homelessness, you know, we could go into a much larger list.
Sure. Just to give people an idea of the distinction between the two.
Yeah.
And the word has come up a number of times, somatic. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Somatic is really, it's just a fancy way of noticing what's in your body. So you talked about, oh, now I'm feeling angry that you're telling me to be loving, right? And so for instance, I love it. It's such a good example, because that's exactly how I felt the first time somebody told me I should love on parts of myself. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's really then connecting with like, what does that anger feel like? Like, where do you feel that anger? Is it in your chest? Is it in your throat? Is it in your arms? And what color is it? What shape is it? How much space does it take up? And really mapping it out in your body. And that allows us to start seeing it as a more concrete thing, versus sometimes anger can feel or any emotion can feel very scary, when it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling this thing and I don't know where it is. I don't know what it is. We actually start getting in touch with the somatic side of things. We can start calming the nervous system down and being like, oh, it's just this fiery sensation in my chest that is a square and is red and it's hot, or whatever it might be, whatever it is for you. So somatic is just connecting down into your body.
Got it. And in your definition of trauma, your understanding of trauma, is this connecting that somatic experience, putting these words and descriptions to the experience in a location of the physical body, is that kind of lining up and connecting with that trauma? Because I experience trauma, especially when I'm working with clients, is that it feels like confusion, like it's unclear, and like my brain forgets as
Mhm.
I'm tapping into the client's trauma that I'm working with.
Yeah.
So if they're looking, if I look to them to describe what's going on, they're not going to have the words to describe what's going on, because it's just going to feel all fuzzy or
Yeah.
like cloudy, like I'm in a fog. Is this what you're making that connection?
Yeah, I don't know if I do it quite as directly, but in an instance like that, like if that were to
Mhm.
come up and someone's like, I don't feel anything. I don't know. It's all cloudy or foggy.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like, awesome. Then what do the clouds feel like?
Oh, there you go.
What color are the clouds? How thick
Yeah.
are they? Could you put your hand through them? Right. And it's actually just being like, no, it's exactly right. Or if people are describing a void or a blackness, cool. How black is it? Is it
Yep.
dense? Does it feel like a black hole? Or is it, you know what I mean? And actually
Yeah. Yeah.
starting to use it on that, because often those things, which are super common, are just a trauma adaptation response. It is
Right.
the
Yes.
brain's way of protecting, of like, ooh, I don't know if it's safe to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to give and let the body know and the nervous system know that, one, we're never forcing it. We don't have to go there if you don't feel comfortable, but let's examine that kind of protective mechanism. What does that feel like? And sometimes actually I'll use a lot of very intentional dissociation. So a lot of times with somatic work, we try to
Interesting.
force people into the body. And if it's like,
Mhm.
this feels like so, like people are like, I can't, it's like, awesome. How far away from your body do you need to be to feel safe?
Mhm.
And they're like, I need to be like 3 feet away. And it's like, what, it's okay. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be above your body? Are you in front? Are you behind?
Oh, it's
You
brilliant.
know,
No,
like,
that's actually really
yeah,
brilliant, because
yeah,
I see a sense of bringing them to the present, being present to what is going on with them in that moment, in a place where they feel comfortable.
yes. It's all about bringing in the safety. And
Mhm.
part of that safety is really whatever. I have never, ever had an exception to this. Whatever comes up in the session, whatever they're feeling, whatever they're experiencing is exactly as it should be.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's just allowing them and helping them realize that it's totally fine if you want to be outside of your body right now.
Mhm.
Like, that's not even a problem.
Mhm.
Awesome. I'll just allow yourself to be outside of your body right now.
Mhm.
And finding the safety. And you can actually even, like, I don't know if you use grounding techniques, but you can like ground from outside of your body, of like, okay, you're out there. Let's just see the safety around you right now. While you're up out of your body, it's totally safe to be up there. Nothing's wrong with that. And really just, and that's what helps people start to build up that trust with their system of like, okay, like it's not wrong. I don't need to be in my body right now.
Mhm.
Um,
And I think this is bringing options up for them that they didn't think they even had. It's
yes,
like, I could be up over there and it's cool. I never
totally.
thought of that. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the other huge piece we examine and look at is really helping people understand how much of what they're actually experiencing is truly created by them.
Mm-hmm.
Because often we're carrying trauma from ancestors, from generation, like generational trauma, just from collective, like right now with, everything that's happening, like everyone has this collective trauma and grief and isolation that we're all just feeling, even if you're not, like, even if you're someone who's been out in the public and whatnot, we just still have that sense of heaviness,
Mm-hmm.
from being in a pandemic.
Right.
So we have to like understanding that like the energetics of everything around you can affect you. So it's actually just separating like, oh, how much is actually mine? Or, oh yeah, that's not even mine over there. Okay, cool. Just
Mhm.
recognizing that nothing's wrong. We don't need to get rid of it. It's just recognizing it's not even authentically mine.
Sure. How do you, this is interesting, you brought up about ancestors.
Mhm.
Curious as to how you work with clients in relationship to ancestors, to ancestor work.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Uh-huh.
uh,
I want to see where we're going to go with this one.
where do we I'm going to ask the question again. Like, I'm curious in terms of, yeah, we just ask it again.
Certainly. How do you know when it's time to work with a client on that level with ancestors?
Awesome. Oftentimes when we're investigating pieces, and I'm usually checking in with this, like how much feels like truly yours. And a lot of times when a lot of it is, they're like, oh, actually, they don't even know why. It just kind of like the answer just comes to you like, oh yeah, like only 20% is mine. Usually that other component can be ancestral, could be other things. And often if we're seeing the same pattern come up, it's usually ancestral, because it's kind of like ingrained and hooked into your system.
Right.
So I bring it up usually pretty early with people. It was a huge part of my own healing journey. So I'm a big fan of ancestral trauma. I mean, not a big fan of ancestral trauma.
Ancestral work.
Trauma.
Yes.
Again, this is like we started the pain. I'm like, I love talking about pain and trauma.
Sure.
Yes. I'm a blast at parties. But
I bet.
So I usually do bring it in fairly quickly if I feel like it's relevant, or it feels like they're like, I don't even know why I believe that, or why this is here, or what that's from. It's kind of this like, I don't know. I think there's usually a feeling of like this carrying this burden, and it's just really hard to identify what it's coming from. Or the other big, massive indicator is if someone is coming to me and they've done a massive amount of energy work. I end up seeing a lot of coaches, somatic healers, like healers that do a lot of this type of work. And they're like, I just cannot move through this piece. It's like, it's usually ancestral. Like if you've been trying to heal something and it hasn't healed, often it's because it's not yours to heal in the first place. Yeah. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, that's where I usually will bring it in.
Any tools you suggest those that are listening might incorporate into recognizing those patterns? Because a lot of people, when they're getting to this point, I think across the board as a society, where a lot of that is really up right now. There is that piece.
Totally.
How might they recognize it, and any tips, tricks, tools that they might begin using?
Yeah. So one, always the more you can map something out. And when I say map something out, that's going back to that, where is it in the body? How big is it? What color is it? What temperature is it? And you don't have to have an answer for each one of these things, but really trying to get like, and it doesn't have to be an image in your mind. It could just be a knowing. Like, I don't really see images. I'm just like, I know it's red, but I don't really see red, if that makes sense. Other people are like really visual. Other people are like, oh, I can smell it. Whatever works for you. Like getting at, like if you were to write down in a book, if you could describe it, like as descriptive as possible, the more descriptive you get and the more you can hang with it of like, okay, it is here and coming into allowance of it, which might take working through some other emotions first.
Sure.
A lot of people want to blow past the steps of like, okay, I mapped it out. And they're like, I just want to get rid of it. And then let me like do this, use this cool tool, but you can't, it probably won't work. I mean, nothing bad is going to happen if you try. It just probably won't be effective if we have this resistance to it. So I just want to say that it's like the importance of coming to a place of allowance and even sometimes appreciation of what you're feeling before moving on to the next step is so important. And again, knowing that could take time and often involves investigating the resistance towards it. You might need to step back, like stop working with that one piece and be like, oh, hello, resistance. Let's work with you. Where do you live in my body? Where are you, what color are you? What do you look like? And things like that. Once you get really clear on this, maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's a mood state, something like that you're like, this doesn't feel like truly me. And you're with it and you're holding it. You can then actually just invite it to go to like a larger healing space. So So it's almost like imagining just whatever that looks like for you, whatever is supportive for it. Like you don't even have to know of like, that's like connected into the universe energies, connected into the earth, connecting to, again, whatever resonates with you. There's no dogma here of what works, but connecting into something that is much greater than you, that can hold these energies, that can hold these emotions that are so much bigger than one body can hold. So you're just like literally like imagining them just being like sent off to a greater healing space. That would be, I guess, the one tool that came to mind when you asked that question. There's other things too, but that's kind of a fun one that you can just play with and just notice what comes up and trust what comes up.
Sure. You know what I'd like to do? What I'd like to wrap up our call for today.
Yeah.
But I'd like to have you back, and I'd like to dedicate the entire time for us to talk about how ancestral, the physical pain that we're experiencing is caused by ancestral.
Ooh, okay, that sounds good.
That would be an interesting how to tie that in and dovetail that in, because I think it was a really it was just like kind of an afterthought at the end of this one, and it's like, oh boy, that one's a biggie.
Totally. Yeah, so I can share a lot more about my journey too with that and stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Well, why don't we'll wrap it up for today. We're nearing the hour mark. What we'll do is we'll have a button below right here that's going to have information that they can contact you directly to get help, support, conversation with you in terms of where it would be a fit or how you might be able to help them specifically. So we'll do that. And then after we end this, then I'll chat with you offline just for a moment, and we'll chat more about part 2.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, great. I thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time. This was a fantastic conversation, very different than any of the other ones we've had here, which is always exciting. Once again, we'll have all that information down below in the description box. We'll get another time where we can have you on again and we can talk about the ancestral pain, our ancestral pain, all that kind of stuff. So we'll dig into that. Any other closing comments you would like to share right before we wrap up here today?
I think the biggest thing is just, it's all about getting to know yourself better and using your pain as a way to do that. It's no external things can be guiding you, but it's all about what truly resonates with you and your journey and your pain and your experience, and trusting yourself and starting to build that trust, I think, is probably one of the most important pieces. Yeah.
Andrea, thank you. Thank you so much. You've been awesome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is Bill Paravano, the knee pain guru, on behalf of the Pain Education Podcast, brought to you by the Comella Foundation. Thank you very much for being here. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning into this week's segment of the Pain Education Corner. Join us next week for another conversation on natural healing methods to eliminate pain. To learn more about the work we do at the Comella Foundation, please visit our website at the Comella, COMELLA foundation.org.